We got to start, though. Like, you're an idiot. We got to start with our, and yours, the Utah Jazz, who have lost 4 of 5 all of a sudden out of nowhere, including just a dominant performance by the Miami Heat at Vivint Arena, which was, I think, shocking to everybody. And the question I think that has to be asked at this point about the Utah Jazz is, what's wrong? What is the issue? And very clearly for me, I think the issue with the Utah Jazz is defense and just straight up a lack of urgency. This is a team that is playing with no edge. This is a team that you can tell, in my opinion, believes, oh, well, it's very early in the season. We got all kinds of time, so we're just going to play some basketball. And there is a real sense that all of a sudden you've lost 4 of 5 and you don't know how you got here. And Jake, I guess the bigger question is, if you don't know how you got here, how do you get away from here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a real solid answer on that yet. I think that the Jazz are, a team right now that is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but trying to find their stride still. It seems like, we've got a guy here or a guy there who's struggling, right? Like, Jordan Clarkson as an example, struggling to make the three ball. You've got, other guys that you're having to load manage. We're not seeing a lot of Jared Butler. Like, there's all these little things that are kind of, in play for the team. And it's just kind of adding up to, sort of, an odd time in their season. I mean, certainly, there was a bunch of jokes going around Twitter over the weekend about fans hitting the panic button and freaking out and the season's over. And it's not. I mean, you're just going through a bit of a rough patch here, and you have to figure out how to get back on the same page as a team. And I think that the real reason this is happening is because defenses have figured out the Jazz, and if you watch these games, you know what I mean. Teams are playing aggressive perimeter defense. They're not allowing the Jazz to just take a ton of wide open threes. And they understand that because the Jazz are pretty much not really that athletic overall, that if they just keep the ball out of Donovan Mitchell's hands, they're going to be in a good spot. And so that's why I still maintain that there needs to be some roster moves made to bring athleticism to this team, to bring, I don't know who the name is, but all I'm saying is an athletic wing who can at least play defense. Yeah, I don't need the guy to be a scoring champion. I don't need him to be the best player in the league, but just somebody who can hold their own individually on the defensive end. Because once that starts happening, the Jazz are going to be able to turn defense into offense, and they're going to get back to doing what they do best, which is basically being an elite 3-and-D team.
Yeah, and I don't know that there is getting back to your best. I guess that's the question with this group, because I think one thing that's very difficult to get away from here is that the Utah Jazz are not a better team than they were last year. They are significantly worse this year than they were last year. Even if it's just execution, this team has backslid significantly. And one of the things that really stands out to you is defensively, they are worse than they were last year. And there's not a quick fix for that. Because if you look at the guys on the floor, and if you look at the guys that, are performing subpar, below standard defensively, it's guys like Bojan Bogdanovic. Well, you're not getting better defensively if you're Bojan Bogdanovic. Joe Ingles is not going to improve defensively at this stage in his career. And I think, Jake, the bigger issue for me is I don't think there's a fix for this team on a consistent basis. They should have beat the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't shoot well. I don't know how you get Jordan Clarkson back on track from 3, because I also think that's a pretty big issue.
Mm-hmm.
But systemically, the system that the Utah Jazz are playing, A, has to change, and B, they need an influx of talent. That's the only way they're going to get back into the championship discussion, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's a shock to the system to see the Jazz losing at home. I mean, this is a team that for the longest time, you were going to the Viv to die. I mean, that's what road teams were doing. You were going into that arena to lose by 20. And let's remember what we were talking about with this team last year, which was, hey, even if they had a rough first half, you always knew the third quarter they were going to come out on like a 20-5 run and either get back in the game or put the game away. And we don't really see that anymore. And so I don't know if it's an issue of, guys like Bogey and Joe are just older players now and not getting it done? Is it an issue of, like is Rudy's shortcomings offensively, are they shining more because defenses know how to stop the Jazz now? I don't think it's one specific thing, but what I can tell you, definitively and confidently is that this team just needs something new on the roster. Like I know they added Hassan, right? Like I know, they added Eric Pascal, but those guys are role players. We need someone to come in here as a starter, a starting caliber player in the NBA to come in and be a difference maker, to bring a different dynamic. Think about it. If Don could bring the ball up, and get it to, again, like a Jaylen Brown-esque player. I don't think they'll be able to get a guy on that level, but somebody who can play the wing like that, I mean, that totally changes the offense and what they're able to do. So that's what I think the mindset has to be as the trade deadline comes and goes. Who can we get? Because you're not going to be able to get like one of the best players in the league. That's just not going to happen. But there's got to be someone out there that they're targeting to try and get to make a difference.
Well, and the other thing that comes to mind is you look at the best teams in the NBA right now. I mean, obviously Golden State is cooking. There's no question about that. I think you look at the Bulls and the Warriors. I mean, that game was wildly entertaining. You look at Bulls or like Warriors, Hornets. Like you look at the way the best teams in the NBA right now are playing, and it is the exact opposite of what the Jazz are doing. The mid-range game is critical, and I think it's one of the things that really lacks for this Jazz team. I would love to see a lot more mid-range game.
Well, and what did we see Jordan Clarkson do in that stretch against the Heat? He got really hot there I think it was like at the end of the first half where he puts up like 14 points in like less than 3 minutes or whatever. Just is unconscious at that point in the game. And the mid-range has a lot to do with it. The elbow jumper, the coming off the screen, so you're totally right.
Yeah.
The mid-range has made its comeback.
Yeah, and I think when I look at the way like DeMar DeRozan dominating the Clippers last night, all of that is mid-range. That's free throw line pull-ups. I look at the way the Lakers getting Talon Horton-Tucker back. What is he doing? He's attacking the basket and pulling up and shooting.
But isn't that the perfect example of what we're talking about with the Jazz here? That's a great example.
Yeah.
Talon Horton-Tucker comes back for the Lakers, a team that's struggling to kind of, I still think the Lakers are trying to find themselves and figure out like how exactly they're going to go about winning ball games with this roster. But last night you see Talon Horton-Tucker come back, and he brings this influx of energy and, frankly, scoring buckets. And that's what I mean when I say the Jazz got to find somebody, a player who they can afford, but can also come in and get you 15 a night.
The other thing that I think is so clearly missing from the offense of this team is somebody with a consistent back to the basket game. We were watching the Nets game last night. Kevin Durant is cooking from three, but he also put an end to the run of the Oklahoma City Thunder by posting up 3 straight trips. Like Carmelo Anthony for the Lakers is a 3-point shooter, hits a huge 3 last night for the Lakers. But he also, slowed the momentum of the Spurs by playing with his back to the basket. And whether that is, you can pretty much point to any of the best teams in the league. They all have guys that can play with a diversity of length. And I don't think the Jazz have that. It's why I say so often that Donovan Mitchell is the only guy that's really playing at a very high level for this team, and he's actually not right now. But he can play at the rim, mid-range, and from 3 offensively. You don't have other guys that can do that. And I know that everybody loves to rave about Bojan Bogdanovic's, back to the basket bully ball thing. But you're starting to see that teams are figuring that out now. And they're bodying him. You're seeing more turnovers. You're seeing him, being forced to dribble more, which is never a good thing. And so I say, you need somebody like a Eric Pascal to have a paint game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That, to me, these are all the things we've been talking about the entire offseason. And now I hear a lot about how, once Rudy Gay's ready to play. Okay, so ask yourself this. What does Rudy Gay really bring to the table? Well, you're going to get some 3-point shooting out of him. You're probably going to get a little bit more effective defense from the 3, the 4, and the 5 because he should really be able to have positional flexibility. but he does not strike me as a guy that's going to go in the paint and bang. He does not strike me as a guy that you're going to expect to dribble drive. I don't think that's his game anymore. So when we look at what is on this team and what's coming for this team, I don't see a solution on the roster.
Yeah.
I really don't. And I know that a lot of people get upset when we talk about, hey, you're going to have to trade Boyan or Joe. I certainly think these are the games where you see that you need an upgrade to Royce O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody that has an answer. And as well as Royce has played, and again, I understand that people celebrate the fact that, he's scoring more, and look at these games where he's playing, he's scoring 15 points, 3 straight games. Well, that's all well and good. They've lost 4 or 5 doing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we've obviously on this show, if you've watched this show for any amount of time, we've obviously had long discussions about, Gobert, and we've had a lot of discussions about Royce O'Neal and, and really even lately Joe Ingles. And I think what we're really, through all of this that we're talking about, what I really feel like we're trying to say here is that they don't really have another guy besides Donovan Mitchell who can really break the game open, who can really make a big difference. And everyone's going to go, well, what about Mike Conley? Well, yeah, Mike has a great relationship with Rudy Gobert. Mike will knock down the open 3 off the pick and roll. But what I'm talking about is like, the Zach LaVines, the Paul Georges, the individual guy besides Donovan Mitchell, because Don can do that too, but besides Don, who else can do it? That's the problem. Defenses don't have to respect anybody one-on-one except for Don.
And you really want it to be Jordan Clarkson, but he's not that guy. He's not that guy. And I think Jordan is a volume shooter, which to me, at times, sure, you need that. I just wish they could dial Jordan in and out a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's tough because, as a guy who comes off the bench with a purpose, he's told to do one thing, and that's score, right? So when you are that guy and you're coming off the bench to do that, you as a player have to have an understanding of when you're feeling it and when you're not. And I think that's the hardest thing with Jordan. It doesn't matter if he's feeling it or not. He's shooting that basketball. And so when he's cold, it can lead to some, not great possessions. But when he's hot, everything's great. Like when he put those 14 points in, everyone was like, oh my God, Jordan Clarkson's back. But at the end of the day, he just hasn't been that this year.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think the trade deadline is critically important to this team. I just will again say you need something dynamic. The other thing I think is very clear, guys are coming for Rudy Gobert now. I mean, you look at what happened, the quote unquote fight he got into the other night.
Mm-hmm.
Call it what you want. I look at the Dwayne Dedmon situation. He was there for that. Like he was ready to go with Rudy. And now Rudy's got an NBA leading 6 technical fouls already. It's November 15 and Rudy's already got 6 technical fouls.
And 16 is the limit before you get suspended. So if we're looking at pacing, he's well ahead of pace to miss a game.
Yeah, man. There is a lack of respect for this Jazz team around the NBA.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, it's really tough. Like I like this is what I mean. So let me get this right. Let's lay this out. So offensively, you need a bit more, right? Offensively, you're like, hey, like we need a change. We need to run a new system or like a different system, or we need some talent. Like we need something here offensively. But then defensively, teams are getting after Rudy Gobert, and then Don kind of gets in the mix, and then this team loses its composure. And so, I think in all of this, we have to keep in mind that Quinn Snyder is a great head coach, but how long, is the leash if you're the front office? I mean, obviously you're going to run this whole season with him. You're obviously not making a change now, but I just think the issue is where your money is at. There's also in the back of your head, hey, there's pressure to win now. Like, we have to figure this out now. It's not good enough for us to just be like a 7 seed or a 6 seed or a 5th seed. Like, this is supposed to be a top 3 or 4 seed in the West and in a team that's supposed to, allegedly contend for, an NBA Finals appearance. And right now, they're really far from that. And so I don't say that to criticize them, but I'm just saying that there's some serious adjustments that need to be made, and it's just a question of how they're going to go about that.
Yeah, I think that adjustment comes with a roster overhaul
Yeah.
because this team is
Do you think
not.
overhaul is too aggressive of a word?
No, I don't. I really don't. I think you have every guy on this team, with a few exceptions, has limitations. I mean, you can look at, the obvious ones again, Royce, Jingles, Bogey. Those guys all have significant limitations to their game. I look at Mike Conley. I like the load managing. He looks healthy to me. But limitations have always been his injury.
Yeah.
Rudy's limitation is he needs his team to shoot poorly for him to have a big game. I look at Don. I think Don's growing. I don't know that I would say he has limitations at this moment. But other than Donovan Mitchell, who, again, I just don't think is playing great basketball right now, other than Donovan Mitchell, pretty much every other regular contributor on this team has significant limitations. And you've got to get through that because what's winning now across the NBA is diversity. And I think when you look at, again, I'll just go back to the standings in the NBA right now. And I don't think there's any doubt with the way that, the Brooklyn Nets are playing at 10-4. They're the best team in the East right now. And it's because James Harden's finally gotten his legs back under him. He actually has lift.
Yeah.
You look at two superstars on that team. You look at a crop of role players that are playing some pretty good basketball.
And they know their role.
You understand that, right? Like, I look at, in the West, I look at the Golden State Warriors. I mean, everybody's doing a job. Whether that is Poole, whether that is, Steph is, obviously your best players have to be their best. Draymond Green is dominating people right now. I mean, they are, and by the way, they don't even have Clay yet. So when you look at this, the best teams in the league, the Nuggets all of a sudden playing really good basketball. I look at the Lakers, who are only 8-6. The Lakers are starting to play much better basketball. You look at the Chicago Bulls at 9-4, playing a nice group of guys, getting contributions across the board, getting a dominant performance from Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. You have diversity in that your offense is spread across your roster.
Yeah.
You're not locked into Don having a huge night or we're going to lose.
And it kind of feels like that. I got to be honest. Like, it kind of feels like that. Hey, if Don doesn't put up 40, this is going to be a tough game for us to win. And I don't know. Like, I it's just tough, man. Like, we're not seeing the ball movement we're accustomed to seeing. We're not seeing the defense that we're accustomed to seeing. And the problem is all this stuff is, exacerbated because teams know what the Jazz weaknesses are now. They've watched enough tape. This team has been good enough for long enough now that teams understand how to get after the Jazz. And so now it's the Jazz turn to bounce back and figure out what that next thing is going to be. And to me, that's the trade deadline. That's your next best opportunity to change the narrative about this team.
Well, and I think we've been saying this now for 2 years in a row. I mean, they need to make a significant deal at the deadline. They need, and frankly, I really hope that it's not, just waiting. I really hope that it's not just waiting. To me, anyway, I just think it is one of those things where, you have to hope, and you have to hope that. What's the right way to say it? You're not going to completely overhaul this roster.
No, I mean you're not. You're not in a position to do that. But I think this front office will be damned if they don't make some serious changes to put this team in a position to make a run. Because that's kind of what this season feels like if you think about it. Right now, it feels like we're just in a time where you got to figure your team out and you got to keep your guys healthy. We're seeing a ton of load management across the league. And that combined with how the game is being officiated now, with how rough it is, I think teams are playing, they're being cautious with their best players. And so that's why I think that's the other dynamic at work for the Jazz. I love the fact that they are unwilling to play Mike Conley on back-to-backs. They're not going to play in both games, and I love that. I think that's really, really smart. You need him for the postseason. So, it's just a different feel.
If they don't make a deal,
yeah,
how would you prognosticate? How would you forecast?
I think they're a second-round team. I think they're the same team in the playoffs that they were last year. The only difference is going to be, does their quality of play go up as the season goes along? And
Are they a second-round team?
Yeah, I think they're a second-round team. I think they would get past the first round.
Because I don't see them having home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs.
Okay, let's throw some names out here. I mean,
If the season ended right now,
yeah.
they'd be in the 4-5 matchup in Dallas.
I think they'd beat Dallas for sure.
I think that'd be a good series. I think the Lakers are going to get better. By the way, they're 6 and 500 in their last 10, maybe 6 and 4, without LeBron James. So you can see that they're coming back together as a club.
Yeah,
they're the biggest shocker there is their defense is terrible.
Yeah,
the Lakers' defense is terrible.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about with the Nets as well. The Nets' defense wasn't good. It's getting better, but I don't know, man. I think, yeah, it's kind of a scary thing to do to look around the league and be like, hey, well, if the playoffs start tomorrow, what would this team look like? That's not a fun conversation to have right now, and thank God you don't got to have it right now. That's the best part about it. You don't have to have it right now. So.
And I think if you look at the teams on the outside, I think the top 10 right now is not going to change in name.
Yeah.
I mean, positioning it will. But the Kings, T-Wolves, Spurs, Pelicans, Rockets are not playoff teams.
No, they're not.
I mean,
they're not.
The Houston Rockets are a young team that's not great.
A lot of people wanted to say the Kings were going to try to scrape into the postseason, but let's say somehow they did that, they would still be out in the first round.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
My point is the plight of this team is going to be interesting because I have to think at some point the Lakers make a deal. I think they have all these assets, and I think they know that they have a bunch of pieces that are, I don't want to say awkward, but they have a bunch of pieces that they're not a finished product. The Clippers, I look at the Clippers right now, 8-5 without Kawhi Leonard.
Paul George, low key playing. I mean, he's
MVP. He's an MVP candidate. Man. Absolutely, he is.
Yeah, he's in that conversation.
But you would have to think they're going to upgrade their roster. If you look at the Portland Trailblazers, they're 6-8. I can't believe that Dame's on that team come the trade deadline. I just don't buy it.
It would be tough to see that, man. And I respect the fact that he wants to win and do what other guys before him did, which is be in one city and take that team to a championship and all that. But it just I don't know. How long are you going to suffer is my question for Damian Lillard. How long are you going to be get to the postseason?
Yeah.
Have to put up 50 a night at the end of the season just to get to the postseason and then get your ass handed to you in a 7-game series? How many years are you going to do that for?
Probably too long at this point.
Yeah. So to me, I'm just like, hey, if I'm Dame, I'm trying to get, I just don't think the ring chasing thing has, if we go back and we remember, when KD went to the Warriors and everyone called him a ring chaser, that whole era of the league several years ago, I don't think that the punishment for players now, reputationally speaking, is nearly as bad. I don't think that if Dame went to, the Lakers or something, that people would crucify.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah. I don't think so. And I think it's only a matter of time. Let's get some comments in here. Well, of course, the first comment is Tanner going after Eric C. Come on, man. Bradlark says, morning, boys. If the Jazz stay silent on the trade front this season, they won't go anywhere. I really think Marcus Smart would be a smart target. He just makes so much money.
Whoa. Do you see what he did there?
Yeah.
That was magic in that comment.
Marcus Smart would be a smart target.
See, that was well done. See, good job. I'm giving you your credit.
Yeah, we talked about Marcus Smart the other day, and he just makes too much money. It just does not make – it doesn't make financial sense. And this is the one thing that worries me about the trade deadline is I don't think the Jazz want to make a significant financial move until the offseason because I think they really know they need to overhaul this roster. I think they know a significant change in the names on this roster is coming.
Yeah, they need a refresh.
Sure. And I think it takes time to do that, and I think they know they can't do that at a deadline. And I think they want to go as far as they can go with this core group of guys. And that's the one thing that worries me. Are you going to trade a Royce or a Bogey or a Jingles? Because that signals a significant change, and I just don't think that they want to do that.
Yeah, I think it's a tough situation. I think, the problem I have with that frankly, is you knew what you were doing and getting into when you re-signed Mike Conley.
Yes.
So you can't re-sign Mike Conley and then at the trade deadline when you need help, not go and get help. I mean, you could, but that logically doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And based on, just going off of what they've done already, I guess for me, I would be surprised if they didn't make a move. But at the same time, I get what you're saying. Like, you can't overhaul an entire roster at a trade deadline. That's not how the league works. You're not going to go from where you are now to, a bona fide NBA Finals for sure book it kind of team, at the deadline. So I don't know. That's really tough, but I can't believe that you would spend all that money on Mike Conley to do what? Just to have him back?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I think they are going to run this back, and I really hope they make a deal at the deadline. I do. Tanner says the trade deadline is this team's only hope. Eric C says, it's a bad season when they lose to BYU, Tanner. He's talking about San Diego State because he came in the comments. Eric C got aggressive. He's talking about San Diego State beating BYU. And now here's Eric C coming in the comments, undervaluing BYU basketball. Just telling you, probably wouldn't do that.
Notice how he's gotten off of football?
Well, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Neville93 says, good morning. Rudy Gay is in the Stars now. What is Rudy Gay's impact on this team?
I think a little bit of toughness. I definitely think that back to the basket game you were talking about. Rudy Gay is a finesse player at this point. He's got a nice jumper, can really play in the mid-range, give you some three-point shooting as well. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was running with the twos and being one of the best players on that second unit. That's what I would look for Rudy Gay to be. And I do think that on certain nights, not a ton, but on certain nights with certain matchups, particularly when Mike Conley's not playing, I think Rudy Gay would have a chance to start a game, against certain matchups. And so I think he's just one of those guys that you're going to plug in favorable matchups. And hopefully he can produce 15 points a night and like 5 or 6 boards. That's what I'd love to see out of him. But,
Yeah. Greg Hawkins says, good morning, everyone. San Diego State sucks. Spencer says, good morning. I think we can safely say the LA Clippers series was not an anomaly, and teams have figured out how to scheme for the Jazz.
Facts.
Thank you.
As we said during that series.
Thank you.
And after that series. Design My says, does Mike Conley make financial sense? He does not. He did not. Re-signing Mike Conley, this kind of deal, didn't make sense.
And what'd you say at the time? Hey, if you re-sign Mike Conley, that's probably going to set you back 2 or 3 years. And they did.
And it may have. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. At the price they got him for, yes, the one that doesn't make financial sense is Rudy. The reason that Mike Conley doesn't make financial sense at any number is you're paying the luxury tax.
Yeah.
And you're not a championship team. And I know that we've taken a lot of heat over this, but right now, can you honestly say that I was wrong when I said that the Utah Jazz are not a championship contending team? Because I don't feel like they are. And I think I've been pretty steadfast in this. They are when they're playing well, they're one of the better teams in the Western Conference. This team, with Rudy Gobert, with Bojan Bogdanovic, with Royce O'Neal, I look at Rudy Gobert and Royce O'Neal on their own, they're not championship players. They're not. And if you go down the roster, is Donovan Mitchell a championship player? Yes, he is. If we go down the roster, is Mike Conley a championship player? Yes, he is. If we go down the roster, who else can you say on this roster right now is a championship player?
Yeah, I don't think there is another one.
Yeah, outside of those two, I don't think there is another one.